and welcome everyone to another Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. I am your host, Nina Joshi, and with me today is Sarah Tibesar, who is the Chief Experience Officer at Digital Diagnostics. As you know, on Women's Health Tech Wednesdays, we love questions, so if you have any, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we will make sure that we get to it during our discussion. So with that, we'd like to formally bring on our guest, Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Thanks so much for being here today.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Of course. So of course, this being Women's Health Tech Wednesdays, of course, the first question that I have to ask you is, what does women's health tech mean to you?
Yeah, I love that question. It means two things to me. First off, I'm super passionate about the intersection of healthcare and technology and the potential for impact, positive impact on patients' health. And I know there's a ton of cool companies doing innovative things in that space, specifically for sort of women's specific health issues. So always love to read and hear about that. The other thing it means to me is just trying to create more awareness and opportunity for women to get into the field of healthcare technology. Huge believer in having the value of having diverse perspectives at the table when solving complicated and important problems, and would love to be a part of encouraging more women to join the healthcare technology field to do exactly that.
Love that, absolutely. And then kind of on that route, would love if you could kind of walk us through your journey and your background, kind of how you got into this space with your current role as the Chief Experience Officer.
Yeah, you bet. So I studied engineering and business when I was in school, and through a combination of kind of some coursework and an internship opportunity that I had early on in my career, just got really interested in the intersection of healthcare and technology, and like I kind of mentioned earlier, just the potential for technology to have a positive impact on healthcare. So that sort of guided my my decision on my first job out of college. I worked for Epic, which is an electronic medical record company, and learned a ton about the industry there and had some great experience. And then from there went on to work at Zendesk, which is a software company based in San Francisco that focuses on customer experience software, and learned a ton about that industry too. And then when the opportunity came along to join Digital Diagnostics and sort of put all of those things together with both the healthcare background. I'm really passionate about leading people and growing teams. So the opportunity to kind of lead the people function as well as the external customer experience function in a healthcare company doing cool things was kind of the perfect combination of some of my areas of background and also things I'm excited about. So that's a little bit about my background and kind of how I landed here.
I love it. Literally is like the perfect combination of, Epic giving you the healthcare, Zendesk giving you the customer experience, and that you seem like that's like the perfect marriage between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. Lucky to be here.
It's amazing. And I would, love that. And I know we're going to do a little bit more of a deep dive into some of the customer experience components of what you do, because I think that is super fascinating. But before we go into that, would love if you could share a little bit more kind of about the, digital diagnostic side of the house, as healthcare is becoming more advanced through technology and AI and all of these other things that we keep hearing about. Would love if we could dive deeper into the technology at Digital Diagnostics and how that's being used to create these meaningful patient interactions.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So at Digital Diagnostics, our flagship product is the first FDA cleared use of autonomous artificial intelligence used to diagnose disease without a physician oversight. So
wow.
The exam takes 5 to 10 minutes, and a minimally trained operator uses a special camera to take pictures of the back of a patient's eye. And then our software is an algorithm that in about 30 seconds is able to analyze those images and diagnose if the patient has the disease or not. And so the specific disease that we're detecting is diabetic retinopathy, which is a common complication for patients living with diabetes and the leading cause of blindness in working age adults in the US. And it's highly treatable if caught early, but only sort of 20 to 40%, depending on what research you look at, 20 to 40% of patients living with diabetes get their annual eye exam, which is the other way that they can detect that disease. So part of the reason for that low compliance is just a convenience aspect and patients needing to make another appointment and go see another specialist and pay a copay and arrange transportation and all that stuff. So that we kind of help with by bringing our device closer to where patients already are. The other thing, one of the other reasons why there's such low compliance there is there's an access issue. So the concentration geographically of where people living with diabetes in the United States is sort of the opposite of concentration of ophthalmologists. So in a lot of areas with high prevalence of diabetes, there just isn't an eye doctor nearby. So that's accessibility, affordability, and quality are sort of three of our pillars that are really important to us. So solving that access issue for patients is one of the things that gets me really excited about our potential for impact.
That's incredible. Yeah, you're just kind of checking all the boxes here when it comes to the quality, accessibility, affordability. And I love that you bring up access, because I think that's something that, especially now, with the use of technology, it's really helping us bridge those access gaps in a lot of ways. So I think that is absolutely incredible. And something that I was also kind of thinking about too, as you were explaining this device, is, physician burnout as well. So I think that there's a lot of really great things that can come with a device like this. I think that's incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah. And our founder and executive chairman is an ophthalmologist and retina specialist, Dr. Michael Abramoff. So, it's good for doctors too, right? He was part of what inspired him to come up with this product in the first place. Was his schedule was packed full of routine eye exams. And then he didn't have space in his schedule to fit in people who would really benefit for quicker access to treatment. So allowing specialists to practice at top of license and focus on sort of treating people who have already been diagnosed to have the condition. So it's good for doctors too. So that powerful healthcare innovation that's good for patients and doctors and everybody in the system.
Absolutely. And I love, you said this a little bit earlier too, about meeting people where they're at. And I think that is something that is so powerful. How do we kind of take the burden off of patients, off of people, so that they can kind of get that quality that they need without having to search for and navigate the healthcare system, which, as I think we both know, can be very challenging.
Yes. Yeah, it's challenging. As someone who spent my entire career in the healthcare industry, it's challenging for me to navigate it at times. So people who do other things for a living, I can imagine have lots of challenges in trying to navigate that and advocate for themselves.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great segue into the work that you do as a chief experience officer, really focusing on the customer experience. And I would love if you could share a little bit more about, what does a customer success mindset mean? And, why is customer experience and outcomes so imperative when it comes to company growth and company impact?
Yeah, I love that question. So some of my background is in the customer success and customer facing space. And I learned from a colleague this equation of customer outcomes plus customer experience equals customer success, right? And I think the technology industry over the last 15 years has, like, customer success has really boomed as a field, as organizations have realized it's great to, of course, we need to go out and find new customers and bring them in. But if we're losing customers to churn or contraction, we're creating more work for ourselves, because we have to go out and, the bucket's sort of leaking from the bottom. So we have to put more water in the top to kind of maintain that revenue. So customer success, huge trend across technology in the last probably 15 years. And but I love the equation of thinking about how do we drive outcomes as well as great customer experience as a part of what that overall success means. And from the experience perspective, I know we interact with companies all the time, right, in our personal lives, and those companies where they're always a pleasure to deal with, right? I see I know Chewy, a pet supply company, that if they find out your pet passed away, they send flowers to their customers, right?
Oh,
Like
wow.
they're a delight to deal with, and people love dealing with Chewy, and that's a part of their brand. And there's tons of examples like that. I'm sure everyone has a story about a great customer experience they had where a company solved their problem and it was really easy and made it easy to navigate. And everyone also has a customer experience horror story where, they transferred me to 3 different people and I had to keep explaining my problem over and over again. And then, then I got disconnected and I had to start it all over again, right? So when I think of experience, it's the powerful sentiment of those interactions says a lot to your customers about what you're like to do business with, and creating customers that are raving fans means they're more likely to stick around. It also means they're more likely to talk positively about us as a company to other people they know. But at the same time, if they love you, but you're not driving good outcomes for them, eventually they may not feel like the technology is a good investment. So it's really important to balance that with what's important to our customers, what key performance indicators, what quality measures in the value-based care space, what outcomes are our customers driving toward, and how can we as an organization help them get great value and drive toward those great outcomes. And kind of the powerful combination of those is what I think of when I think of customer success mindset. And it's part of the fun that I have in my role is getting to apply a little bit of those same principles in other ways with our internal employees too.
Absolutely. And I love that combination about kind of combining, customer outcomes or patient outcomes. So kind of the integrity with the delightful experiences that kind of make them build trust. And I think that is so important. And when you're talking about that Chewy example, I think it just kind of goes to show that it's those little details that can stick with you as a consumer. So I love that you kind of called that out.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, there is, when we think about customer success or just success, there's the external, which we talked about, but would love to share or learn a little bit more and have you share about kind of the internal success, right? So with employees, would love if you could share a little bit more about, the significance of having, these internal experience or success stories with employees, and how you've been able to, build these improved experiences for them and why that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I could talk about this all day. So glad you asked the question. Employee experience, employee engagement, huge passion of mine personally, like coaching my team members and helping them grow in their career has been sort of the thing that got me out of bed in the morning throughout my career. And I've learned a lot and been able to put some of that to use in my current role. The reason why it's important, there's all sorts of studies out there about the impact of employee engagement and just sort of thinking through employee experience across the life cycle, from hiring to onboarding to growing to retaining, and how that impacts business outcomes. It's things like makes companies more effective. There's a huge cost associated with, if you lose someone, you need to go out and recruit for a backfill, right? So there's a huge impact to business and the bottom line, and there's tons of HBR studies and stuff like that written about it if you want to dig more into it. But hugely impactful to the bottom line to grow and retain our people, and also I just think it's the right thing to do and a lot of fun. So positive impact on business for sure. And in terms of I guess also in the Great Resignation, right, or sort of the job market in the last few years, particularly in the tech space, there's a ton of options out there, and there's a ton of exciting options. And I want to make sure that our employees feel like the exciting options that they have for continued growth within our company are more enticing than what other opportunities they might see or what other people are up to on LinkedIn. So if you think about it, on the customer side, we're competing for business. On the employee side, we're competing for employees. We want to make sure that that we are their top choice and that they see exciting things ahead in their future. So in terms of how we do that, I take a similar sort of outcomes plus experience mindset and approach on the internal side. And I think in terms of outcomes, having clear expectations and clear growth paths for employees is hugely important. And in my experience, it's like a simple thing that a lot of companies get wrong, right? They just assume that everyone can, well, they know what's expected of them. I don't need to explicitly state it, or that, people, my experience is employees really crave understanding what good looks like and what great looks like. And
absolutely.
To be able to take control of, to grow and advance your career and understand what it takes to get to the next level. If you're a manager and you want to be a director, right? The clarity of expectations there, I think is huge. It's not rocket science, but a lot of companies sort of fail to take a disciplined enough approach to actually put some of those things on paper. And those are really impactful ways to support employees. Individual development plans, another great example, having a toolkit for that. And on the experience side, I sort of think of the Chewy example again, right? Like how can we be a place that our employees enjoy doing business with, right? So one of the ways we approach that is through employee experience surveys. So we do sort of a longer engagement survey at the end of the year, and then a smaller one midway through. But taking the time to both do that and then actually read through, listen, and respond to, right? Like gathering feedback is important. But if people don't feel like there's transparency around what feedback was gathered and what you're going to do to address it, doesn't help you in the long run. So again, it's not rocket science, but the idea of asking for feedback and actually listening to it and finding ways to learn from and hear ideas from our employees, and continue to find ways to serve them in the way they want to be served, right? To engage employees in the way they want to be engaged is huge, and it's been a lot of fun. We use NPS as our kind of key performance indicator, and we're up over 30 points on the NPS scale since 18 months ago when we started doing the survey. So if you know that, you'll know why I'm proud of that number. But yeah, so thinking about the outcomes and how can we make sure that our employees are successful in their roles now and feel like they're advancing toward their career goals with us as an organization. And then also, how do we create a place that's fun to show up to, fun to be a part of a team and solve interesting problems, and feel like feedback is heard, and our employees' voices really matter to us, because they do.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you're the success story. That's, you were able to see that jump, which is amazing. And I think the two things that I love that you brought up was just general transparency when you're talking about the survey, but also with things like growth plans and just having transparency over roles and kind of what's needed to get to that next step. Yep. And I love that you also talked about, it's step one to get the feedback, but it's step two to actually execute on it. And I think that is definitely an area where, your employees are able to see that, okay, my employers are taking what I say seriously. So I love that you kind of make that a priority. And kind of on that, curious to know, like, as I would imagine that as an employee, if I'm, collecting these surveys, if I'm writing things down and I see them being implemented, it just makes me want to be more engaged. Have you seen any like engagement when it comes to like, percentages of people that have maybe, started to take it or do it more often, just as they've seen that, their thoughts are being implemented?
Yeah, it's been, it's sort of a virtuous cycle. Like as our participation rates have been growing along with our NPS, right? I think we had 90% or 90+% participation in our most recent survey, and I do think the fact that people know, like, two people in the company, myself and our director of people and business operations, who's also fantastic. We read every comment, and they know that they will see at our next all hands meeting, like, here's what the summary is, and here's what we're going to do about it. So I absolutely do think there's there's a virtuous cycle there. If we get better participation, and also by showing that we're open to receiving constructive feedback, right? I want to know if something we're doing doesn't meet the mark for our employees, that people become more willing to share that kind of feedback, which is the stuff that we really need to hear. So I absolutely think there's a virtuous cycle there.
That is incredible and very, very true. I think, having these types of tools that show value, I think it's just you keep feeding into it, which is amazing. And so kind of on that note about, you have really just demonstrated the value of something like this. What first steps kind of would you recommend for companies that, are maybe, younger companies that are now starting to have a bigger workforce and more full-time employees, or just companies that really want to expand their employee engagement practices? Do you have any good first steps or recommendations to kind of get things started?
I love that question. I think starting small would be my first advice. When I joined the company in April of 2020, and we didn't have an onboarding process, we didn't have a hiring process, we didn't have a performance review process. Like all of those things are things we've built in a couple of years. But I think start small, start with something. Know that whatever you do, you can iterate on. I think gathering feedback and then taking the time to actually process and listen to it is a great first place to start. And that could be with a survey. That can be a really low lift to just ask some questions. There's a book, I think it's Marcus Buckingham's 9 Lies About Work. Super interesting book. They did a bunch of research and sort of landed on what they think are the 9 best questions to ask for employee engagement, right? So if you haven't done a survey, start with those 9 questions and see what you learn. I think that can be a great, easy way to identify where to start. Another thing we've started doing recently is something called stay interviews, which I learned about through a great partner we have called The Perk, that we've done some work with in the past. And a lot of companies do exit interviews where when an employee is leaving, we do those too. You ask and see what you can learn from them. But what a shame to wait till someone is leaving to find ways to learn from them. And so we've made our way through the entire company in the last year of having one-on-one conversations about, what makes you want to stay? What makes you want to stay? And, if 6 months from now you were to leave, why would that be, right? To just kind of identify more proactively what we can do better. So I think maybe if you're not sure where to start, the combination of a survey and or some of those stay interviews to just get information and perspective from employees and start building that muscle of listening to feedback and demonstrating that you're going to take it in and do something about it. Two small steps that would help reveal sort of where to start taking bites off the elephant. You don't have to do it all at once.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, a lot of really actionable recommendations. So definitely appreciate that. We do have some questions from our participants. So before I ask my questions, just want to take some time to get some questions answered.
Great.
So the first one is, usually AI health technology is very expensive. Do you have any initiatives for affordability and access solutions to expand patient access?
Great question. And yes, access is a huge part of our mission. And we have a couple different business models that are aimed at allowing us to provide our technology at a low cost to groups like federally qualified health centers and other great groups doing sort of community health work. So yes, absolutely, we have a significant portion of our footprint is actually in federally qualified health centers, and it's important to us to support that as an initiative from an access perspective, and we get great data and research partnerships from some of those fantastic organizations doing great work. But definitely doing good is a part of our mission, in addition to obviously running a business that makes money. So definitely enthusiastic yes to programs that support access in a way that's not cost prohibitive for organizations like that are doing great work.
Absolutely. There, I think, is another question which I believe is pretty similar, kind of talking about this idea of access, especially. So this question is related more to how can innovations in AI and health be made accessible to marginalized groups? So I would imagine it's very similar to kind of what you were talking about from an affordability perspective, but wanted to see if there's anything else to add as it relates to marginalized groups and being able to provide them with affordable, accessible health.
Yeah, I think from a diversity and equity perspective, that is one of the foundational pillars of how we build algorithms. I think that is our founder, Dr. Michael Abramoff, has done a ton of great work in the field of safe and equitable AI and building AI in a way that ensures that there is no bias in our algorithm based on race, gender, ethnicity, et cetera. And some of the ways that AI in other spaces in healthcare have been developed, it sort of misses that piece of making sure that people with a variety of skin pigmentations, right, would have the same performance with their algorithms. So that's absolutely an important cornerstone, not just in how we build our AI, but also how we engage with policymakers around how we think all healthcare AI should be built in a way that it equitably serves and provides the same outcomes for all groups of people.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And thanks for that question from our participant. And I like that you really talked about this idea of being, it comes from a design perspective to being able to be intentional and, really design something that is equitable, that can provide quality care for everyone. So I like that was something that was kind of ingrained in your solution and that you're kind of working with policymakers and legislators to ensure that this type of model is perpetuated.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, awesome. Well, I know we're at time, but I wanted to ask you one quick question, which is, do you have any final words of advice to share with our participants? Any feedback or career advice that you've gotten yourself that you would like to pass forward?
I love that question. My favorite advice to give that I think is universally applicable is to insist on understanding. I think this idea of like fake it until you make it, or particularly when I was earlier in my career, the temptation to just sort of pretend I understood something and assume that the pieces would fall together for me later is a trap that never works out well. So I think having the courage to say, that didn't make sense to me, can you explain it in a different way, has had a huge impact on me because it helps me stack up knowledge and understanding of broader concepts a lot faster. So I think insist on understanding. Curiosity is a great asset in advancing your career, and making sure that to the best of your ability you understand every concept that crosses your desk will continue to add building blocks that you can use to take your career in any direction you want.
I absolutely love that. Insist on understanding. That is incredible. Well, on that note, I think you kind of left some amazing words of wisdom for us. I really wanted to thank you for taking the time to chat with us today, Sarah. Really appreciate such a fruitful discussion. Awesome. And so we have our next episode next Wednesday, of course, with Abby. So please be sure to check that out. Wanted to give one last huge shout out to our guest, Sarah, for an amazing conversation. All of her LinkedIn information is in the chat if you want to continue the conversation with her. We also have our symposium tomorrow, so please be sure to check that out. All of the registration information is also in the chat. One last thank you to our sponsors, Goodwin and Witham. And thanks again, Sarah. We'll see you all next Wednesday. Bye.
Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for joining. Have a great one.